So this morning we got the said passing news of Pastor John MacArthur and also Pastor Dr. S.D. Gumbi. And these being two different ministers, from one from the US and one from South Africa, but they are largely known solely for the gospel in their respective countries, right? Both of them. And there are people that ran the race, particularly about their ministries all the way through, right? For some people, something comes up, it taints their walk, it completely corrupts their walk, and they lose a viewpoint, or they lose how they are seen pertaining the gospel. And that's kind of like the subject that I wanted to talk about in this video. Although you might disagree with maybe one of them pertaining one doctrine or the other, I might also disagree with one or two of the things that they might have believed, but they ran their race through. And that's the subject that I want to bring up here on this one. I know that Pastor John MacArthur, they finished a Bible thingy project not long ago. And so it must be a joy. I mean, like the Master Seminary is one of the major influences for many people in ministry, particularly within the Baptist field and so forth, right? And so, speaking about this thing, it reminds me of a verse, 1 Corinthians chapter number 9, verse number 23 up until 25. And it says, I do all this for the sake of the gospel. So the center here is that, until my desires are so changed that the gospel's sake is more important than fun's sake, I'm going to do this for gospel's sake. I'm going to focus myself, either be in apologetics or what, so I may know how to respond to someone. I'm going to give myself time to doing that. I'm going to take away this time that I might see for pleasure or whatever it is. Not to say that people shouldn't rest, but I'm going to take away that so that I may be able to present this solely. Right? It says I do this for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessing. There's a blessing in the gospel. There's a blessing in the gospel. And I always want to talk about right here. There's a blessing in the gospel. A blessing in the gospel. The Bible says, for those that die in the Lord, they have not died in vain. I mean, like, their rewards follow them into the afterlife. And the Bible is very clear concerning those areas of rewards and stuff like that. But this 1 Corinthians chapter, which I'm reading for you, it's not just in that there is a blessing in the gospel. I want to show you what is it that the gospel comes with. How does the gospel change a person's characters and actually interests? Using that particular verse. So when it says there, I do these things for the sake of the gospel, so I share in its blessing. And so there are areas of our lives that have a capability of changing habit. The gospel, in what it joys in, when the Bible says the joy of the Lord is my strength, notice it's not focused on my joy. My joy can be silly. Yeah. The things that I want to take joy in can be silly, utter foolishness, worthless. That's what the Bible says, serve the Lord in your youth. The reason why it's saying that, it's not saying, in case you want to go for spring break and lose yourself over there and then come back and be serious about life. Like maybe you want to go out and just Coachella yourself, or you want to go out and just do whatever, and then, you can come back and then we get serious. Now, the Bible actually encourages that we engage and diligently give ourselves dedicatedly. So Paul puts it in that manner. Dedicate yourself to these things at our early age. He even says so to Timothy. And so he says there is a blessing. And so this blessing is not, for many people, the blessing they would love for it to just be money or a car or wealth or whatnot. But that's not what the Bible is talking about. The Bible is talking about coming to a place of pleasure with what the gospel gives. The gospel gives the capability to have a change of transformation. That's in the blessing in which we share. Yes, there is the inheritance amongst the believers, but there is a blessing of starting to value different things. The Bible gives us that. The gospel gives us that. Which is why I said I wanted to talk about this pertaining, running your race all the way through as this man did. He says, do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? Now, in this verse here, when he says that, you're like, oh. So is he saying we compete with the gospel? That's actually not what he's talking about. Because he's about to put a personal race. Immediately after putting that whole thing about everybody that runs, but one receives the race, he's putting this idea of a race in our mind, but he's going to put the race as a personal journey. He says in a race, all run, but one receives the prize. But he says, run as in such a way as to take the prize. So he's saying, be conscious about the rules, basically, because if do not disqualify yourself. You're not going to disqualify yourself from running. You're going to disqualify yourself from a prize. It's the subject matter. The subject matter is that there is a prize in here. He says, run in such a way that you understand what the rules are pertaining the journey you're in. He says, run in that manner. So meaning live in a manner. Okay, but by the way, you don't just say just preach nice. Just preach nice. Preach very good. No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, preach and live in a manner. Live in a manner which obtains a prize. What does that look like? We don't even need to say it. You know what that's like. But remember, there is a blessing he has announced already that allows you to now get to this place where you are able to run in this. He says, run in such a manner to take the prize. And then he says, everyone who competes in the games train with strict discipline. You see what he brings in there. They do it for a crown that is perishable. But then he qualifies it with saying, oh, but us, it's a crown that does not perish. In verse 25 of 1 Corinthians chapter number 9 there. It's a very interesting thing that he's putting out here. He's putting out this idea about how life's journey is thinking. And if you can give this example even with the Jews. The Jews were given the battalion to run with the gospel, the blessing of Abraham, faith for justification. And they failed it. The Bible says they found for themselves a stumbling block. And when they found a stumbling block, there was this hurdle that they were not able to cross over. And because of that, they lost the battalion for the gospel. And it was carried on to other generations, right? We all know how that went out. And now, with us, we are given this race. They were given this battalion to carry the gospel through, right? This is why I'm saying this man ran all the way. For some people, their life gets tainted. We hear funny stories after and whatnot, and it just completely ruins. For some people, they don't understand. There are certain mess. There's a certain mess you make that after it, people will literally mark you by it. They don't even have to say it publicly. Everybody just know it, and it's just that. You can't get away from that. It's just that. There are people who've been known to be into certain type of scams. That's it. They're labeled in that manner. That's it. They've lost, meaning you lose your voice in ministry. You lose your voice as a minister. Run in such a way to obtain a prize. Okay? And then it says, they do so for a perishable crown, but for us, for an imperishable. It says, therefore, I do not run aimlessly. Now, there are people that live as if they are living aimlessly. When you read about the crowns in the Bible and the rewards in the Bible, I think it's about 5 crowns or whatnot. You listen to the strict supervision that one should have over their doctrine. There's a reward for being biblically and doctrinally pure. There is a reward, and you see it in the 7 churches. There is a reward about believing the correct doctrine. There's a reward for being, for not enabling Jezebel or not enabling falsehood. There is a reward for all this. There's a reward for overcoming. There is a reward for triumphing over challenges by the gospel, by allowing the gospel to change us to a point where when we are in the middle of a crisis, we face it biblically. There is a reward for that. That says a lot. That says a lot. But for a lot of people, they lose this idea. They miss it. It's like it just comes, it's like it's not even within their peripheral. It's not within their view. That our race is as one who is before a thing. And so that's the thing that I kind of like wanted to kind of like highlight. To remember, for some of us who have been in ministry for long enough, or who've been in ministry, to remember you are before people, you are before the public, and should you not run this race as one who is worthy of, but by worthy we mean that the person can literally decide, I'm not going to watch this person because of that. So don't lose, right? Do not lose the battalion for the gospel. Do not lose the flame. And by the flame we don't mean you don't have steam. You're not pushing hard enough. No, that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about don't live so aimless in this life that it will discredit the gospel or the message of the gospel. There are people that should not drink. Period. You have no business even touching a bottle or even getting anywhere next to a bottle. Because there are people that are not going to listen to you after they've seen you with a bottle. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be faithful to that level, or want to be faithful to that level, guess what? You can't do that. Because there are people that are just not going to see you the same way if they've seen you with a bottle. It just doesn't, There are people you flip-flop. You've seen it in life in general. You've seen people flip-flop between the gospel and God and the world and stuff like that. They do it so many times. People forgive. Okay, no, maybe it's a mistake. And then after a while, they're like, oh yeah, no, that's just this person. That person has lost the battalion for the gospel. They completely lose their voice. Like they do not have a voice for the gospel, like ever. Like there's nothing they can say about the gospel. That's what it means, not to run aimless. To actually finish the race. That's what it means. And a lot of people don't think about that, and they just kind of like, brush it over, and that's about it. But what it actually means, or what it kind of brings back or remind is, live very conscious that you can lose your voice to speak this thing that you say you love so much. That's what it says. And at that point, there's nothing you can do. There are people who are there right now. They don't know it. They keep shouting. They keep shouting. They keep screaming and thinking. And it's why? It's because the person has lost. They've lost the rope. They've lost the lifeline by which they can communicate the gospel to anyone. Like, there's nobody that's going to listen to you. Like, there's nobody that's going to take you serious enough. That should scare you enough to. You can recall. There are people who you can recall back. There are people you can recall back and say, yo, I saw it with this person. He supposedly preached. And then there was a time when people just didn't want to. They were not interested. They didn't want to hear nothing. Why? Because that person loses. They lose their voice because they don't have credibility. So no, we can't listen to this person. Sensitive. Think about that. Being able, it's a blessing. That's what that verse calls it. That's what 1 Corinthians calls it. It says it is a blessing that we get to share in the gospel. That's what he calls it. Verse 23 there. He says, I do all this for the sake of the gospel so that I may share in its blessing. The blessing of having my life defined. My joy, the things I joy in, the things that I cherish, the things that, I'm trained. I've built a discipline so much that I joy in what the gospel joys in. And I don't live my life as one who, who's aimless. I thought that was worth us sharing and having a conversation about it. Yeah, tell me your thoughts down in the comment section. It's the Rick's Reality Show. Other episodes out there, they'll be down in the pinned comments, and I'm going to check you out on a later on episode. Have a blessed day.